The core of the relationship between the Latinos and the Jews are to try to begin emulating their success. They emphasize education. Every mother in our communities would love to see their child have a good education. Unfortunately, the educational systems in most urban communities are poor. So we look at that community as an opportunity for us to understand how to impact the educational system. I remember going to school when I went to St. John's. There were probably, out of 13,000 students, there were probably 6 or 7 Latinos. When I came to Temple, I was the only Latino student at the law school. We have lacked political participation mainly because we feel foreign in a country where we're citizens. And so I would hope that, the relationship that we develop now with the Jewish community, there would be an understanding of that struggle. The good thing about the American Jewish Committee is the fact that they have the experience, the history, and the understanding. We need them to help us, as they did with the African Americans, understand what it is that you have to do to get some of the civil rights and some of the opportunities that they were able to essentially advance for the African American community. And that's one of the reasons that we think that they are in the right position to essentially develop coalition laws. And then the coalition is 2 ways. We also want to make sure that we understand their issues, the issues of Israel and the protection of Israel, the issues relating to whether or not people take stereotypes with regard to their communities, like do stereotypes of us, and how we could be defensive in those areas. And so there are areas that we think we could be mutually beneficial to one another, and we can learn from one another. My mother was born in Puerto Rico. She was one of 14 children. Um, my grandfather, her father, was partly Indian from Taino, from the island, and partly French. On my father's side, there was his mother was Spaniard, and his father was from Canary Islands. So I had a portion of the Canary Islands, a portion of Spain, and then my great-grandfather was African, from Africa. Right after the war, the World War II, she was 19 years old. She was pregnant with me. She was not married to my father. My father was married and had 6 other children. She then took the Tiger Marine, which was a warship, and got off where all the immigrants get off, near the Statue of Liberty. She had one sister who lived in the Bronx. She went to the Bronx, and then I was born some 6 months later at Bellevue Hospital. I went to school in Harlem. Then I went to St. John's University. After I was St. John's is when I came to Philadelphia. I was recruited by Peter Leocoris to study law. I remember going to school when I went to St. John's. There were probably, out of 13,000 students, there were probably 6 or 7 Latinos at school. When I came to Temple, I was the only Latino student at the law school. The Puerto Rico has a special relationship with the United States, which is a commonwealth, which means that as long as you are in the United States, you have the full rights of citizenship. When you're in Puerto Rico, you don't. You basically are a citizen with colonial status. We have lacked political participation mainly because we feel foreign in a country where we're citizens. And now, with the large influx of immigrants, Latino immigrants, both in South Philadelphia and other parts of the city, what you see is a real success story for the next generation of those immigrants in terms of promoting themselves to the process, but somehow the population after them becomes just like the Puerto Rican community, where they become very satisfied and very uninvolved in the political process of the political. And so I think part of it is that they don't feel that this is their homeland. The Jews couldn't go home, the Cubans couldn't go home, many of the Nicaraguans couldn't go home, the Mexicans, many of them don't and can't go home. So having that dual relationship and being citizens at the same time, I think suffers our community from the participation. And then we come with colonial mentalities. We were a colony of Spain for 500 years, and now we're a colony of the United States for 125 years. So the colonial mentality, I think, is a difficult one, and I equate it to the fact that when slaves were let free, it took them a while for them to understand that freedom meant more than just being free. They had to go to school, they had to learn, and they had to be involved in the process. And I think that that's the problem with my community, which is that colonial mentality exists. And so I would hope that, the relationship that we develop now with the Jewish community, there would be an understanding of that struggle. The good thing about the American Jewish Committee is the fact that they have the experience, the history, and the understanding that we don't have. The Jewish community has been able to teach us that there is an essence of understanding how to protect your community from abuse. And I think that understanding that is very important, but in the same thing, we understand that we need also to coalesce and not be very selfish in what's good for us only, but what's good for us together. And I think that's where, for the first time, we have a coalition that we're looking at how we could work on each other's issues instead of just what's good for us. The core of the relationship between the Latinos and the Jews are to try to begin emulating their success, which is they emphasize education. Every mother in our communities would love to see their child have a good education. Unfortunately, the educational systems in most urban communities are poor. So we look at that community as an opportunity for us to understand how to impact the educational system. Now, the commonality also comes from the fact that we're both immigrants. We saw that the discrimination that has occurred traditionally for over 500-600 years of the Jewish community was something that I thought that we could relate to in terms of that relationship, and that has developed the outgrowth. So there was always a feeling of friendship and commonality between the Jewish community and the Latino community. The question now is,